Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the Ignite Hub. Welcome to Montgomery College. My name is Kimberly Blackrincan. I'm the director here at the Ignite Hub, and I'm here with part of our team, Anthony Fiora, our lab coordinator, and Ambar Mello, who is our student worker with us this semester. We made it to December. This is the final Fireside chat for 2025. We're so glad that you decided to come out. Our topic today is careers in tech sales, a gateway to the digital economy. And this is a really important topic because a lot of the guests that we have coming to our fireside chats are doing a variety of things in technology. And we want to make sure that the community knows there's lots of opportunities in technology, sales included. So we wanted to feature the story of our guest speaker, Toby Zellers, today to talk about his experience in his career and hopefully inspire all of you, those of you that are here in person or our guests online. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. Toby Zellers is retired from full-time employment in 2022 after 8.5 years with Amazon Web Services. There, he managed the public sector infrastructure go-to-market sales team, which engaged with leading security, storage, networking, and telecom partners. Prior to this role, his focus at AWS was enabling partners to deliver their products and capabilities to U.S. government customers using the classified AWS regions. Prior to AWS, he had leadership, sales, and technical roles at Apple Computer, SGI, NetApp, Veritas, and Semitac. Toby co-founded an IT reseller, Tavar Solutions, and implemented the marketing, security, and partnership strategy, as well as acting as the chief technical officer. Toby's career started when he served in the U.S. Army in Germany as an intelligence officer. He earned a BS in computer engineering at Leahy University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Let's welcome Toby.
Hey, Kimberly. So how are we? Are we good? So thank you everybody for coming out tonight. I'm really pleased to see so many people in person. And Anthony, how many folks do you see online? About 5 people. So thank you. And there may be more joining. Hopefully there are. But if you think this presentation is worthwhile to share with other people, I understand that they will record it. It's being recorded and it'll be made available on YouTube to other people. So with that, next slide. So, when people graduate, this is a very common gift because graduation just means tomorrow is a lot of unknowns. And Dr. Seuss really wrote this book for younger, not younger adults maybe, but it could be anybody at any age about where you're going to go, what are you going to do? And some of us have preconceived notions about what we want to do. When I was 5 years old, I knew I was going to be an engineer. I just knew that. That is what I was going to do. Somehow it actually didn't work out that way, but we'll talk about my story here as we go on. The next slide, please. So Kimberly gave you a quick rundown on my career, but I'm going to go into a lot more detail because that's what this story is about tonight. How did I go from here to there, to there, to there? What was that winding path that took me to retirement? And why did I make the choices I did? What things helped me along the way? And what was good for me as I did this? So next slide, please. So the agenda, a little bit about sales in general, my history, a short story from that history, a case study about somebody else, and then I'm going to talk and suggest some next steps for the audience. Okay. So why would somebody consider a career in sales? Well, it's profitable. People that are successful in sales can gain lots of good money. You can earn a lot of money in sales. And we're going to talk a lot about that because selling is very, we say, coin operated. You get out of it what you put into it. And that's what deterministic means. If you don't work hard, you're not going to be successful. You can determine the outcome by being smart and by working hard. And it's challenging. convincing people to take their precious resources and trade it to you for something that you understand is going to help them, but you've got to convince them of that. That's a challenge, but it is fulfilling and it's fun. And it's fun because most of all, it's fun to win. It's fun to play a game and win. It's fun to make a sale and win, do a deal and win. It's fun to work with fun, smart people. And what I found in my career is I work with a lot of really fun, smart people, and I have many great relationships because of that. And I'm going to end with rewarding because it comes right back to that. It comes back to why you're in sales, because you want to work hard, you want to be successful, you want to sell the product that you've been asked to sell by your company. Next. So why not? Not everybody thrives in the environment I just spoke to. There's a lot of pressure in sales because you work for somebody that has an obligation to the shareholders or an obligation to their superiors that they're going to make money for the company by hiring the right people. And so, if you're into movies, one bad example of why not is a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross. Anybody seen this movie? No? Come on, somebody had to see it. So it's a classic. Oh, all right, here's my plant in the audience. If you want to see the worst of sales, go to maybe YouTube or Netflix, Glengarry Glen Ross. That's not accurate to everybody, but I bet you there's places like that. You have to work hard, and some people just want to have enough time for leisure. Sometimes what you're working on is taken from you. You lose the deal by no fault of your own. You've done all the right things, but then, the government shut down. There's market pressures on you. And then salespeople have this reputation. So it reminds me of a joke. What's the difference between a car salesman and a computer salesman? Anybody? You're laughing. Do you know this one, sir? All right. The difference between a car salesman and a computer salesman is a car salesman knows when he's lying. Now, let's think about that. A car salesman's got this lousy car, but he's going to tell you all the good things about it. Technology is so advanced sometimes you've got to be a PhD electrical engineer to even understand what it is you're selling. And that's why it's difficult. That's why computer salesmen might not really understand all the implications of this technology. And I got to say, you have to be a bit extroverted to sell. You have to be able to get out in front of people, talk to people, engage with people. If you're not comfortable with that, direct selling is probably not the right thing for you. Okay, next slide, please. Now, I believe this is true. Great sales skills can't be replaced by artificial intelligence. And I say that because we see artificial intelligence mentioned everywhere. But artificial intelligence is not going to replace the human aspect of selling. It can enable many things in life, and it is doing that right now. But people buy from people. And I'm not talking about just going on the Amazon page, because I work for Amazon and I've bought a lot of stuff over many years from Amazon. But that's not the kind of selling I'm talking about. I'm talking about complex purchases, complex deals that take a personal relationship with that buyer and that seller, and maybe a team from both sides to make a decision to invest hundreds or millions of dollars in some product. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this gets back to the money. When the incentive of making a lot of money is bigger than all those reasons why not, then maybe sales is important to you. And maybe you should consider a career. Next. So to pass to a career in IT sales, I've had an interesting time working with a lot of great people. And I always notice things like, what degrees do these people have that are successful in IT sales? And there's been accountants, but there's people that an education degree or economics. Of course, there's engineering or there's history. And I've met very technical leaders in sales organizations. And what's your degree? Oh, I was a history major. To me, that was very interesting. Now, they had a interest in this technology, but the fact is, when they went to the university, they studied something else that was more interesting at the time. I've also met a lot of people who've been very successful without any degree at all. So depending on the company, it might not be important that you have a degree. And for another company, I'll talk about this later, is very important. And another surprise to me, I have met multiple attorneys, multiple people with a Juris Doctor degree or had the JD, and they're attorneys, lawyers, and they're now selling. They're not using that law degree at all. And that to me is also interesting. Why would somebody spend the time and energy and money to pass the bar? And it turns out they enjoy all these things I talk about when it comes to selling. So that's pretty cool. The other thing I looked at and have met are people with a variety of careers before they were selling. So the first one here, school teacher. There's a gentleman named Tom Tittermary who I've worked with over the years. And Tom was a high school Spanish teacher. He had 2 daughters. He lived in the Northern Virginia area. And he just didn't see being able to afford to be the father he wanted to be to his family with the money he was making as a Spanish teacher. So he saw an ad in the paper, and the ad was from a company that we had worked with and had a great leader as the person running the company. And his resume got put in front of this gentleman. And he's like, I don't know why I would interview a Spanish teacher for selling technology products. All right, I'll talk to him. So the recruiter brings him in. Tom sits down. He says, "What? Why are you here? Why would I talk to you about a sales position?" So Tom says, okay, this is what I understand about your business. I don't understand a lot about it, but my understanding is that your people help people decide to make an investment in something they don't understand, and that will be a benefit to them. Is that correct? He says, yeah. He says, well, my job as a Spanish teacher is to convince people to spend their time to study the Spanish so they learn the language that will help them. So I'm in fact selling the concept of learning Spanish to the students. Isn't that what you're doing here? He got the job, and he's been very successful, taking that attitude of applying what he was doing as a teacher. I've met military officers, musicians. I think the funniest one is when I worked at Apple, Richard Schlein was a ballet dancer. He was with the Cleveland Ballet. So he was a professional ballet dancer. And he got a job at Apple because Steve Wozniak bought the Cleveland Ballet's second season and brought it to San Jose. And he sat next to Woz, if you know the history of Apple, at somebody's wedding, one of the ballerina's weddings. He said, Woz, how can I get a job at Apple? He said, so you should apply. You're a smart guy. You'll get a job. That didn't work. So a few months later, he ran into Woz again. He said, nothing happened. He says, okay, give me your resume. And the next day, he got 3 phone calls because Woz says you should talk to this guy. So that's a little bit of networking that helped a ballet dancer get a job at Apple as a sales engineer. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'm gonna, as promised, a little bit about my story. And Kimberly, if you don't mind, I'm gonna use other pronunciations for some of those company names. So go ahead. So I started off, grew up in Connecticut, small town, and I worked in a butcher store. It actually plays into a little bit later. Working a counter in a butcher store. That was my first exposure to sales, was cold cuts, selling roast beef and pastrami, right? And I worked there. I also did some work in the salmon cannery in Alaska. But I got an ROTC scholarship. So next slide, or next click. And that ROTC scholarship was a commitment. I had to spend 4 years taking Army classes while I was going to university, and that trained me in the skills to be an Army officer. And then I served as an officer in a variety of ways over in Europe. And it was pretty exciting. I'm still friends with some of my Army buddies. But I did the Army because I wanted to go to college and I couldn't afford college without that scholarship. So I made the choice in high school to join the Army because I wanted to be an engineer and that was the best way to get there. All right, that's great. But now I'm done. I want to get out of the Army and I get a job as an engineer. So go ahead. And from the Army, I went to work for a contractor. And from that contractor, I went to work at Apple Computer as a pre-sales engineer, which is really a sales position, but it's technical. From there, I went to sales, and Apple made me a sales rep next. And then Apple acquired Cray Computing. So now Apple used Cray Computers, but then I went to Silicon Graphics. That's actually where I met my friend Adam here, who's my plant in the audience. And then from there, Network Appliance, Veritas Software, Symantec. I went back to Apple for a year. TVAR Solutions was an IT reseller where we resold products to the US government. And then Amazon Web Services, where I spent the last 8.5 years of my career. So most of my life has been in these sales jobs in one way or another. And now, click, if you don't mind, I'm retired. I do a little consulting. I do volunteer work with IT at my church. And I continue to teach the motorcycle class here at Montgomery College, which anybody here want to take a motorcycle class? I'll tell you how to sign up. Talk to me in the break. It's learn to drive safely. Okay, so that's my record. We're going to drill into a couple more of these things here. If you don't mind, please, Anthony. A little bit about selling first, please. I find that people are all selling something. Okay, you walked into this room, Kimberly and Anthony had a kind of a rolling slideshow selling you on the Ignite Hub. So they're selling something. High school teacher, in my example with Tom, was selling Spanish, right? Soldiers, what do you call a soldier who's selling something? They call them recruiters. All these little offices that have soldiers that are trying to get people to join the military, recruiting offices, they're the sales team of the military. Okay, and it's no different than what you would see in Glengarry Glen Ross as far as the pressure they have to get people to sign up and join the military. Preachers can be very salesish as they try to grow their flock. Politicians are certainly using sales skills to convince people to vote for them and other people to give them the resources that they need. Okay, so executives are selling a company. Boy Scouts, and I'm going to say Girl Scouts here. I think Girl Scouts are better at this than Boy Scouts. So Girl Scouts have this great product. They're cookies. Everybody loves those cookies. But Girl Scouts are just nice people. Of course, you walk out of the grocery store and yes, I'll buy a box of cookies. And there's actually a pretty good value there. Boy Scouts sell popcorn. And when my son was in Boy Scouts, we were just starting off in the troop. And one of the dads was talking to the scouts and he says, listen, boys, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to REI or I want you to go to this other store and try on boots and try on rucksacks and all the gear you need to be a Boy Scout and be camping and all this hiking stuff. He says, and then don't buy anything, go home and go online and buy it from Campmore, which is his online camping store, and it's much cheaper. And I got so angry because this guy was basically telling these Boy Scouts to lie to a salesman, to say, I want you to spend your time to help me, and then I'm going to give my business somewhere else. All right? And I said to this guy, Joe, who asked the kids to do this, I said, and yet you're telling those same kids they need to sell $3 worth of popcorn for $20 and give them a merit badge for that. So that's why Girl Scouts are better salespeople than Boy Scouts, because they starts with having a good product at a good price. And I'll say, I'm a motorcycle instructor. I'm a sales guy too, because I'm teaching people, I want you to ride safely. I'm teaching you that, but I'm really selling the concept of having fun with the skill called motorcycle riding. Okay, next slide. Okay. Key to selling is developing trust. with your customer. You've got to know your products. If you're not technical and you're selling IT, you're going to have a struggle with that. That's going to take a lot of extra work. And when I worked at NetApp, one of our sales people, his last job before he joined the company was a waiter at a really high-end restaurant in Manhattan. He wasn't technical. And this guy, Mark, was in the office till 7 or 8 o'clock every night, studying, learning, trying to know his product. Okay? And he's very successful, and now he's like a career coach. You got to know your product. You got to know your customer's business. If you don't understand why your customer is doing their job, what their mission is, how they do things, how they operate, and what technology could help them, you don't know how that technology you're selling is going to help. So you got to research your customer. You got to study them. Talking to them is the first way to do that. So you got to get out in front of them. And if you do that right, you're going to anticipate what their needs are and be able to present your solutions to them. The key is when you talk about your solutions, you don't want to use your words, you want to use their words. You want to bring your solutions in their context, okay? Have the details, be responsive. I've known some people that were not very technical selling IT, that the customers loved them because when the customer asked a question, they immediately got them an answer. Customer emails them at 8 o'clock at night, 7 a.m. the next morning, they had the answer because that person who wasn't technical would go find somebody that knew and get them involved and get the answer to the customer. So that responsiveness was huge. And they used the team, the overall team, to actually deliver answers to the customer. So you got to know where to get help. Next slide. What happens then as you move along that career path is you establish a personal brand. People start to know you. Okay, some people know me by whatever. And luckily for me, I've got this nice name, Toby, that most people have met more dogs than people named Toby. So that works for me. All right, because I'm as nice as a dog, or I can be. So I've met parakeets named Toby. But you own your personal brand, and you want, I want my brand to be people think I'm nice and I'm honest and I'm smart. That's what those three things are what my brand means to me. You might have a different brand, but you control that, you own that. So people will respond to you as you demonstrate those basic skills that are on the left-hand side of the slide. Next. I use LinkedIn an awful lot. Okay. I use LinkedIn and the LinkedIn network. And when I made these slides a month ago, I had 6,000 connections on LinkedIn. And I can tell you that I don't accept connections from just a recruiter that sends me, hey, I want to connect with you. Now, I got to know somebody. But in my business, I've been lucky to meet a lot of people, having interfaced with a lot of people as I dealt with partners and partner teams. A lot of people that I talked to in a presentation. Somebody walks up to me tonight and say, can I connect you to LinkedIn? I'll say yes, because we've connected. I've met you in person, okay? You want to connect with people professionally and use the right tool. So you don't become, friends on Facebook with business associates. Just like you don't become, if using the network next door network, you don't do that with your family because they don't live next door to you, right? You're going to use the social network that's appropriate for the conversations you're having. And in this case, the professional social network of choice, at least for my world, is LinkedIn. Now, people use TikTok as a way of influencing, and that's a new way of selling and a new way of monetizing interest in products. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's a way to be successful in communicating, but it's not something that's actually going to do a big deal, right? TikTok's not going to close a big deal. And by big deal, once again, I mean $1 million deal between two organizations, a company and a company, or a company and a government. Okay. So don't abuse that social connection. Once you connect with somebody, don't immediately try to sell them life insurance. That's people will turn you off right away. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to tell a little story of some unexpected consequences. So things happen. You don't know why. Let's go on ahead with this one. So my story starts at Wiesbaden Air Base in Germany. And I'm a second lieutenant in the Army in 1984. And I had a degree in computer engineering. And I wasn't using my technical skills at all in the Army. I just wasn't. There's nothing about my job in the Army as an intelligence officer that was technical like I studied in college. And I said, I need to go buy a computer. So I go into the next slide. I go into the PX, the post exchange, like a little Target that's on most military posts. And I say, I want to buy a computer. And at that point, 1984, we had the IBM PC with a green screen. That's it. That was it. It was a beautiful machine for 1984. And the salesman said, this is what we're selling mostly. And it's got all the software, and it's a bookshelf and all these boxes of software. And there's lots of software available. This is what everybody buys. I said, what else do you got? Show me something different. Next slide, and I think click twice. He says, Apple just came out with this thing. And there was the Apple II. He says, Apple just came out with this thing. It's called the Macintosh. It's a little bit different. It's got no software. There's no third-party software. It comes with some software, but it doesn't do all the stuff that the IBM does. And I looked at it. Actually, I looked at it closer, because this is it. This is my original 128K Macintosh that I bought in 1984. And I said, that looks different. It's got this thing called a mouse. Nobody had ever used a mouse before. It's got this tiny black and white screen. It's it had a processor that was different than the IBM. But when I looked at this, I said, this doesn't look like what I used in college. This looks like the future. That looks like the past. This looks like the future. So I bought this machine. I borrowed $2,750 from my bank. My friends made fun of me. They said, you could have bought a BMW car, a BMW motorcycle. You could have so much fun with that money. What did you buy this thing for? So I bought it and I used it. I used it as a professional tool. Back then, the Army was pretty immature with respect to using a personal computer for Army stuff. And that was pretty cool that I got away with that. This thing had 128 kilobytes of RAM. 128 kilobytes of RAM. This thing has, I got a note here, 64 gigabytes. That's 64 million kilobytes of RAM. 64 million, 128. All right, so I think we've come a long way since 1984. The space shuttle, by the way, had 1 megabyte of RAM. So space shuttle didn't have that much on this guy, but it probably took years to make. So anyway, I bought the personal computer, I used it, and then the next step, next slide, I got out of the Army, and one of the things that attracted this company, Space Applications Corporation, to me was that they had used Macs because their product for their customer was paper, and I knew the Mac. So I came in, and not only did I work as an engineer on like satellite systems stuff, but I also ended up being part-time desktop support in the computer center. So that's pretty good. And I got smarter, all right? So when you're helping people on something, you get smarter. The snowball gets bigger. So then I saw that, click again. I saw that Apple Computer was, oh, I'm sorry, before that. One of the things that happened was we were having a Christmas party at Space Applications Corp. And I thought, there's this new program on the Mac called HyperCard. I'm going to do something just on my own, because nobody at the company ever heard of this stuff. Go ahead, Anthony. And there was this piece of software called HyperCard that Apple was now giving away for free with every new computer, or you could buy it for $50. And it was basically a programming environment if you wanted to. Now, it's not like Swift, it's not like Python or any of those things. It's pretty simple. and it predates the World Wide Web. So this was the first commercial application for hyperlinks in the entire industry. Tim Berners-Lee looked at HyperCard as, I want to build something like HyperCard, but for the whole world. So go ahead, Anthony. So what I did is I wrote a stack. That's what you call a program that's written in HyperCard. Let's bring this up here. And I wrote something called I call it my SAC stack, Space Applications Corporation stack. And we had a holiday party, and I had this on a computer in the lobby. People came off the elevator, and they could just click on the screen. Now, this is 1988. Click here. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, here's the org chart for the company. All right, go ahead and click on Noel at the top. And here's the boss. Here's the guy that hired me, Noel Whitterfield. He flew in the back seat of a SR-71 Blackbird. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records. He's a really hot dude. All right, he's an amazing guy. And he ran our office. Go back to the org chart. You know, I worked under Tom Cook. So anybody could get off the elevator and they could learn all about the different business parts of the company. Go ahead and click on the map, Anthony. And oh, where are we located? Now, at this point, this is pretty simple programming using HyperCard, but it opened some eyes to what was possible. Let's go back to the PowerPoint, please. And next slide. So then I saw Apple was opening up a federal sales office. And I thought to myself, I would love to work at Apple. I even had people telling me, you should be a computer salesperson because you have such a passion for these things. Well, they don't know me. So I wrote them a cold cover letter. And I said, I'm Toby. I have a top secret clearance. I've been using the Mac since 1984. I would love to be a part of your team helping to sell Macintosh to the US government. Of course, I wasn't coming from a sales shop. I had no sales experience. So I interviewed. First guy I interviewed was a sales manager, a guy like Adam, tough guy. And he says, well, what do you know about sales? I said, well, I've never really had a sales shop, except when I worked in the butcher store and somebody would come in and say, well, Toby, what's good today? I would know what we had a lot of and what was fresh. And I'd say, oh, pastrami's perfect today. Oh, good. Give me a half a pound of pastrami. And he liked that. He liked the idea that I talked to the customer, engaged with the customer, and then sold what we had to sell. And then I had to do a presentation to a group just like this. All the candidates for the jobs had to do a presentation to see if they could present. And we had to do it so that showed you what you know what to do. So what I do, I demoed the SAC stack as a part of my interview. So I show, here's my company. I built this. I learned how to program in this. And I did my presentation. And I got the job. And I got to say, my salary also did this. And it was going to do this if I got a master's degree, but it did this because I changed industries and I went into the sales organization. Spent 6 years at Apple, go ahead, Anthony, moved into a sales job there, continued to work with the intelligence community, Naval Research Lab, NIH, Health and Human Services. Those became territories that I got to know very well. And then I was offered a job at Silicon Graphics. Actually, somebody that I worked with left Apple, went to Silicon Graphics, and told the boss that, hey, you should talk to Toby. You should bring him over. So this is how you mostly move jobs in sales, is because people bring you along with them. So there, I also worked in the intelligence community, Health and Human Services, NIH, Department of Commerce. Next slide. And I think that the high point for me at Silicon Graphics was I worked with the Cancer Institute in Frederick, Maryland, and I sold them this $6 million Cray computer. Now, I didn't just walk in and say that, and nor did I have a TikTok video show why they should buy it. No, I spent 2 years helping them understand the value of the new technology, introducing the people from Chippewa Falls and Eagan, Minnesota to them. I think I want to go one step further, things I did. Go to the next slide. I had to understand the customer. See, you can't do anything unless you know where the money comes from. With a commercial company, you've got annual reports, 10 case statements. A lot of information's on the web now, security analysis. The government, there are companies that sell that information. If you could click here, please. So I actually went to the Appropriations Committee, and I was very lucky that the ranking Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee for Health and Human Services was from Wisconsin, where Chippewa Falls, where they make great computers, was. And I got to understand the value of talking to congressional staffers. And I went to the appropriations testimony where the director of NIH got up and said, this is how much money I want for next year. And I heard the conversation between the members of that committee and Dr. Varmus and all of his directorate staff. And to be honest, that was something that I used not only with my Cray customer, but all my other customers at NIH. And they were very intrigued by the fact that I was with the Appropriations Committee, which is where all the money for NIH comes from. So knowing your customer is knowing where the money's coming from. And the thing about this story is that Mac, this guy and the printer I got it with cost me $2,700. And my commissions on that Cray were 2 orders of magnitude more than that investment. So it was a 10-year ROI of 2 orders of magnitude. So this is the value of selling and learning how to sell and learning how to take care of your customers. Okay, let's go on. So I now got a short case study. I met Mark Surratt, who, when he's at Naval Research Lab, he was a PhD postdoc. NRL, if you don't know them, they're the part of the Navy that does a lot of research. They're in DC, right on the Anacostia, or right on the Potomac River, right across from National Airport. And there are multiple Nobel laureates that have come from Naval Research Lab. It's just a top tier research lab. And so he's a smart guy. He's a PhD working there. And like any other postdoc with a lot of smart people, he's also a sysadmin as a side job. And he's the system administrator for some SGI boxes, some supercomputing kind of boxes that SGI had sold them. It wasn't me there. And so he's talking to his sales rep and the engineers that work with him. And he got intrigued by maybe I should go to work at SGI. So then he comes over and he starts to work for SGI. And he's the most educated pre-sales or consulting engineer we've got. That's fine. So he's a good guy. And one night he calls me up. He says, Toby, I'm confused by something here. I think I'm pretty smart. I'm Mark, you're very smart. Then why does a sales guy make so much more money than I do? So what do you mean? Well, I know what everybody makes here. And, how do I make that kind of money? I said, Mark, it's really, really easy. What you got to do is you got to raise your hand and say, I want you to cut my salary in half. No, Toby, you don't understand. I want more money. I don't want less money. I said, Mark, slow down. Raise your hand. Say, cut my salary in half. Put me in a sales job. Pay me commissions. He says, that's it. I said, yeah, you just got to be willing to do it. Now, he had a good personality for sales. Click, go ahead. And he became a salesperson at SGI. He went to Marconi, which was doing high performance networking. He went to Network Appliance, where he was a manager. So that screen's over there, yeah. Palo Alto Networks, the security company, Zscaler Security. But he's back at NetApp right now in a real senior job. But this is a person that just saw where he wanted to get to and just needed to know, what does it take to do it? And he had the right personality, but he was willing to take a chance to take that gamble. Okay, so that's Mark. Next slide. So then what are your next steps? Well, if you're in the industry working, okay, if you're working and you're interested in sales, then get to know the sales team where you work. If you're at a college, there's probably a sales team here that's trying to attract students. If you're, and if you're in the military, it's recruiting. But wherever it is, you've got to raise your hand like Mark did and take a chance and go for that sales job. It might mean a cut salary initially. Okay? Now, if you're a student, and all this applies if you're still a worker, if you're a student, there's some things that I can really recommend. focus on writing and speaking. Your communication is so important. And I found this out at working at Amazon, which is a company driven by writing. And all the decisions in Amazon are made by writing. It's interesting. At Amazon, you would never show up for an internal meeting with a PowerPoint deck. The only way to have a meeting at Amazon is you write a 6-page paper. And that paper has your value proposition, your proposal, what you want to do, why you want somebody to give you money internally. Now, that 6 pages articulates everything you're asking for. And it might have 100 pages of attachments with the raw data. But somebody should be able to read 6 pages in 15 minutes and understand what you're asking for. So you come into a room like this, all these people, and they all have a stack of paper in front of them and red pens, and they all read for 15 minutes. It's perfectly quiet. It's the scariest, eeriest thing in the world. And they all read these pages, and then the boss says, okay, is everybody done? Okay, let's talk about it. And he'll go person by person by person. So what did you think? And now what happens is now everybody's read the whole story. Everybody is adding to the story corrections, suggestions, challenging assumptions, that kind of thing. If we're trying to do the same thing on PowerPoint, you get to slide 2 and somebody has a question on slide 7. Now you're going to jump to slide 7 and you lose your train of thought because that person's important. Why would you know what happens? You've all sat through these PowerPoint presentations where people jump around because they want the data, their mind's thinking about other things. So this process is all based on being able to write concisely, accurately, no fluffy work. And I had to learn a whole new style of writing when I went to Amazon. It's also important to know finance, accounting. You need to understand how the money works. I'm not a money person. I was an engineer. I was not a finance major, so I had some learning to do that way as well. That big crate computer, that was something that we used a lease to sell to the government. And I had to learn how to make that work, and it's very successful. You network, and network applies to a worker as well. You just get to know people. You talk to people. You introduce yourself. You ask how you can help. And then you can go on from there. So if you click the next slide. Oh, gentleman, Mark Weber started a program at Catholic University on sales. And so this is, I think you see this at other colleges nationwide, but there are basically, you can get a degree in business with a concentration in sales. And they've got courses specifically towards IT sales in this curriculum. And a couple of things they've got here. There's about 60 or 70 people per year in this program. It's about 4 years old. There's 550 alumni active in the community. Right now, there's 200 students in the program. It was named the top sales program in the US by the Sales Education Foundation multiple years in a row. And, the average 5-year income, so the income of students 5 years after they graduate, the average is $200,000 a year. Very successful program. Now, could anybody just walk into that? No, you've got to have all those other traits that we talked about. You got to be able to have the technical aptitude. You've got to have the enthusiasm. You've got to have the communication skills and everything else. But if you're interested in a sales career, that is a logical path to follow if you really want to get the professional background to make that kind of transition. Okay, next slide. So follow-up questions. I mean, should you be in sales? Is that something that maybe it's somebody in your family? Would they be successful in sales? All right. This is the conversation to have. Do you have what it takes to be successful? Do you have the interest to be successful? Okay. So as you see, my conversation was not in technology. I didn't talk about Python versus, Pascal versus C++. I didn't talk about hardware, VLSI. I didn't talk about getting into large language models. I didn't talk about eigenvalues. I didn't talk about all these things that are theoretically. But at the business level, I talked about what's important to be successful. And if you know those other things underneath, then you can be involved in selling those technologies and those products. So what questions do y'all have? No?
Class, and then we'll go to the questions.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I thought that was the hook, Kimberly. Usually I get the hook. Okay.
I can start with a question. Given we're in 2025, headed to 2026, AI's on the, not just on the horizon, it's here. What kind of sales opportunities are there in that kind of three-way connection, AI, sales, and IT?
So I really believe AI is going to be everywhere. All right. So we're seeing AI take over autonomous vehicles. AI is writing. AI is changing pictures, changing videos. It doesn't change the fact that people have to trust the people they're buying from. We all know it's easy to make a mistake in buying something lousy, and then you don't trust that person ever again. And I got to tell you, DC here, it's a very small community. All right. We, I only have like 6,000 friends on LinkedIn. So maybe that's a big number, but it's amazing how when I have a conversation with somebody, I can look at LinkedIn and quickly find someplace we have in common. Now, AI can help you do that, but it doesn't replace the fact that people are going to have an emotional response to another person that they're not going to have with a robot, that they're not going to have with AI. Going face to face with somebody, when I walk into your office, I'm going to see all the mementos, all the tchotchkes, all the things that you have. Maybe it's something that you said that I'm going to react to. And that's what we're going to pull that thread, pull that string and say, hey, I'd ride a motorcycle. You ride a motorcycle? And then we spend half an hour talking about motorcycles, 5 minutes talking about the product. But now I don't just have a customer. I have a fellow motorcycle rider that's friends with me. But it doesn't have to be motorcycles. It could be hiking. It could be, hiking the Appalachian Trail. It could be doing a lot of different things. You just have to have that relationship with the person. And then they trust you. And if they trust you, they're going to buy from you. Okay. Any other questions here?
Oh, you hold. We have two in the chat. William asks, how should an entry-level salesperson qualify a potential company to effectively train their sales methods?
So there's, once again, I would use that social network. First of all, I'm talking to a company about being hired there. I would see if I know anybody or know of somebody that knows somebody that works at that company. I'm going to reach out through my social network and I'm going to say, okay, what's the deal? All right, I'm going to name a name here. In technology, there's a company called Carasoft that hires entry-level people with all types of degrees, and they've hired bartenders and they've hired people without degrees. And the bottom line is these people have become very successful in technology sales starting at Carasoft. So if somebody was to reach out to me and say, what do you think of Carasoft? I would encourage you to talk to Carasoft. But there's many other companies just like that that have strong reputations. And you can get that reputation from the social network. Now, there are other companies that are kind of more like that Glenn Glary, Glenn Ross, where it's a real high pressure environment. Now, you may learn something at a place like that. It's just you don't want to live there forever. In other words, you might want to go to a place and you find out that it's just too high pressure, or they're trying to make you sell something that is garbage. You gotta just cut bait and go get another job. All right. Don't leave yourself in that situation where your morals are being hurt by the position. All right. and you'll get to another place. And it doesn't hurt you to go there for 3. Now, if you have a resume that is, I worked for 6 companies in the last 4 years, then somebody might look at that and say, here's a problem that you can't judge where you're working before you go to work there. But nobody's going to ever slight you for only spending 3 months at a company, but maybe the next company you're there for 4 years. Okay.
A follow-up question to your answer there. How do you spell that company you said? I'll put it in the chat for everybody.
Carasoft, Carahsoft.
All right, we have 2 more questions. Joe asks, are you hiring?
I am not. As a retired guy, I have no interest in hiring, but I certainly consult, and I will talk to somebody about hiring me in a consulting opportunity.
And then William asks, again, follow-up question, what outside resources best complement your work to put you ahead of your peers at a company?
You know, it depends on where you need the help. If you need help on writing, you know, one of the things I did is my wife's an excellent writer, and I put some papers in front of her, and I got her as outside help to help me with some writing. If it's technical, I usually figured it out myself. So it all depends on what you need help with. Within your organization, there's going to be somebody there that can also help you, whether it's technical and it's a pre-sales engineer or a technical product manager, whether it's marketing. It might be something like the legislation affairs person at Cray who helped me get the meetings with the House member who was on that committee. There's lots of people out there that would love to help you. You just got to ask them. Any other questions? Sir.
Yeah, rise of social media in sales. So how will you see that the impact of social media to sales right now?
So I think social media is fundamental now to sales. Okay. I use the example of LinkedIn. LinkedIn as a platform for people to articulate their successes, their initiatives. Maybe it's nothing more than nonprofit stuff that they're doing to show the human side of them. It also allows people to recruit other people. Hey, I'm doing great things at my company. Come join me at my company. So that's one social media. I think everybody talks about TikTok these days, and TikTok is about influencing. So there's a product and there's somebody who would love to talk about that. Oh, this is the best microphone ever. This is a Shure microphone. And I love doing presentations with the Shure microphone. And that gets put up as a TikTok video, and then they get money back from Shure. So that's a kind of marketing. But don't confuse marketing with sales. Okay, sales is whoever has the contract at Montgomery College to sell 5,000 of these microphones. That's a bigger deal. It starts with marketing. It starts with creating awareness, and that's what social media is about. When it's actually time for the college to buy 5,000 microphones, that takes the person selling it. Is that helpful? Any questions? Yeah.
What about in-person networking? Is there in-person networking?
You can't beat in-person networking. So if there's professional organizations, in the military, industrial community, there's a organization called AFCEA, the Armed Forces Communication Electronics Association. And they have meetings and they have conferences. And anybody can go to these things. You don't have to have a uniform on. And so as a salesperson, you might go to a conference like that, or an agency might have a conference that has to do with their technology. So The Geospatial Intelligence Agency has a conference every year about geospatial intelligence. And that's where you would do in-person networking. Or you might have a friend that can introduce you, or a customer basically invites you to a happy hour. That's in-person networking. So socializing with a customer, with a prospect, with a partner. And partners are a big key to this because oftentimes multiple entities are involved in the sale. It's not just me selling you something, it's me and my partner company and somebody else working together for the solution. And so that creates a networking opportunity. Hey, we're going to go out and we're going to strategize. Let's go get a beer or let's go get coffee. And that's that in-person networking.
Thank you. Toby and I met at Silicon Graphics, and we've worked together for a long time. Yeah, a long time. You're here at Montgomery College, and both Toby and I, like any journey, there's multiple steps to get there, and it's very difficult to climb a mountain in one step. It's very hard to sink a 40-foot putt in one step. But both Toby and I took a path which was a technical path. Whereas Toby learned the Apple, I sold computer-aided design software for the government. I worked with it. I was an engineer for the government. I found a product that I really liked. And so I called up the company and I said, I really like your product and I've been using your product. Can I go in as an engineer and help the salespeople sell the product? A lot of times salespeople, and Mark Surratt is a perfect example. He used to sit in my office as an engineer and he would ask, why are you making so much money? But that person didn't come in as a salesperson. He came in as a technical person. We're sitting here at Montgomery College. You see in the catalog, there's all kinds of application softwares that are available. What Toby did was he took a language, got smart on that. He used that as a mechanism. Your first job isn't necessarily going to be your last job. But if your goal, and there's a great book, or Stephen Covey has a tenet called Begin with the End in Mind. And so if you here at Montgomery College and you start taking classes on a particular technology, you go to work for that company, Apple, Amazon, any of them, and you feel that you want to get into the sales element side of things. Once you're inside the organization, you have a 1,000 times better chance to pivot because you know people, you know when the openings happen and things like that. So it's daunting. It's hard to sit there and go jump in and say, I want to go into a sales situation. It's a lot of pressure in sales situation. I had a very similar situation with Toby, and the person said, should I get into sales? And I said, I want you to wake up every day at 3 a.m, splash cold water on your face and say to yourself, if I don't make this sale this week, I'm going to be fired. Then after you're there for a week, if you still can pet the dog and hug your kids and hug your wife, you're well suited to get into sales. The hardest part of sales is the clock's ticking. So when you're out cutting your grass on Sunday, at the ball game on Saturday, the clock is ticking. The end of the world happens on December 30th. That's when the quarter ends. You're working for public companies. They have to report their earnings. If you bring in your deal on January the 1st, you missed your assignment. It's like LeBron James scoring the basket after the clock is over. He's not, why he gets paid a lot of money is because he's able to do things under a function of time. And the world pays a lot of money to people who can do things under a function of time. Don't want to steal your thunder, but you're in a great spot. Go get technical expertise here. 500 yards. Go take the classes you want, plan it out. Take a CAD class, computer design, take a programming class, take a database class, go get a job somewhere. Use one way for you to interview a company and see if you like the product is use the product. I love the product, and it just so happened the piece of software that it ran on a Silicon Graphics computer, and I fell in love with the Silicon Graphics computer, and so I wanted to go work for them as an engineer. I was not a salesperson. Once I got there, I thought to myself, this is an interesting path I'd like to go down. As we used to say, go over to the dark side. So it's hard. So it's not an easy path. I don't want to, all the social network and all things like that. You still got to be really lucky to walk in that front door and get a sales position. However, you're selling yourself, and your campaign starts with, what assets do I have to sell myself? When you sell a piece of software or a car, it has a big engine, has cup holders. Those are the assets the car has. You have to say, what assets can I put in my bucket so that when I go talk to somebody, they want me. I'm selling Adam. MC, you're here. You go in that catalog, and there's a whole bunch of things you can learn to get you right in that door and pivot.
And by the way, the order for that Cray supercomputer did arrive on the last day of the year, of our fiscal year. So that's that pressure that I was under that day to make that $6 million sale. It wouldn't have done me much good on July 1st. Okay. What other questions? With that, thank you all very much for your time. Thank you, Anthony and Kimberly, for inviting us in.
All right, thank you. Before we go, Toby, we have a token of our appreciation for coming and speaking at the Ignite Hub. All of our guest speakers are volunteers that come out and want to share with the community. So this is just a small thank you for taking time preparation and coming to speak. Very insightful. I definitely learned a lot myself. Maybe I could be in sales. I already am. I sell the Ignite Hub. That's what I sell. Anyhow, guests online, you should have a link for a survey. Here I am selling. We want your feedback. Guests here in person, there's a QR code. Please scan that. We'd love your feedback. We are wrapping up the year, and we have our guest speakers for the spring, but we're always curious and looking for other guest speakers. And we really do pull the data, go through it. What are our guests saying? What do they want to see? How can we make that happen? And we need you to fill out this survey so that we can have the data to look at and plan appropriately, because the value that we have here at the Ignite Hub, we want to make sure we're meeting your expectations and have you come back. I see so many faces here that are return guests. So we're very appreciative for that, because that tells us we're offering something that you like. So thank you for that. I'm going to do a little commercial for the remainder of our programs here. Next week, we have the Future of Tech Lunch and Learn with Luis Montez, who's going to talk about AI and the future of education. We also have career coaching as well at the East County Education Center and career workshop as well. And that topic is, it's all the way over there. What's the topic? Job search, I think it is, Anthony. Great. Again, free services. This is a time where people are wanting to make career pivots and changes, and this is an opportunity to get free information, whether it's for you or somebody that you're connected with, family, friends, anybody else who's looking for that type of support. Again, it's free. And that's it, right, Anthony? Those are two public. What am I'm missing something?
The only other event that we have would be the Paul Peck Humanities Institute Honors Intern Showcase on Friday, December 19th.
Thank you. Yes, we do partner here with academic departments. So we have, as Anthony said, the Paul Peck Humanities. So we are going to have students, interns who did digital storytelling, showcase their stories. And we're going to have interns at the Smithsonian, I think it's at the National Library of Congress, talking about their internships and what they learned. So this is an example where we have partners using our technology here to be able to showcase student work. And we're so proud of that as well with that partnership. So with that, if I don't see you until 2026, enjoy your winter break, whatever winter holidays you celebrate. I hope that they are joyful and that they are resting for you and relaxation, and that you'll be fresh for 2026. So thank you.